the Linguaverse episode 4, the Somatic Lexicon. Welcome back to the Linguaverse. In our last episode, we journeyed from symbols to spells. We saw how words move from mere signs into forces that enchant, how repetition, rhythm, and tone turn language into incantation. We saw how freedom, home, and flag become words that don't just describe reality, but move bodies, bind identities, and stir conflict. But now we turn the lens inward. If words can be spells in the world, how do they live inside us? How do they shape not just our thoughts but our flesh? This is where we arrive at the idea of the somatic lexicon, the living dictionary stored in our bodies. Every word we have ever heard or spoken leaves a trace. Some are light and liberating. Others are heavy, constrictive, even wounding. Some calm our nervous system. Others tighten our chest, shorten our breath, and cause a knot in the stomach. The somatic lexicon is not a metaphor. It is an embodied reality. Neuroscience, psychology, and lived experience converge here. Words are written into our muscles, our vagus nerve, our hormone cycles. They are remembered in the body long after they are forgotten in the mind. To begin, I want to share one example that reshaped how I thought about language. When I studied the etymology of the word corporation, I learned that in Latin, corpus means body. A corporation originally was a body made of many people. Over time, though, the word came to mean an artificial body, a legal entity, detached from the living flesh of those inside it. In some traditions, it was even called a dead body entity. Think about that. A word that today makes us think of business, profit, or faceless bureaucracy once meant something more visceral, a body. And in shifting its meaning, we shifted our relationship with it. To speak of a corporation now is to invoke power without accountability, presence without flesh. The somatic root has been stripped away. I remember feeling a physical jolt when I discovered this etymology. The word suddenly carried weight, unease, a ghost of its original body. This is what the somatic lexicon is about, not just abstract definitions, but how words live in us, how they move our breath, our posture, our sense of reality. Another example, equally charged, the word patriot. For some, it is a word of pride, chest lifted, spine straightened, eyes shining with belonging. For others, it is a word of exclusion, even violence, a reminder of forced conformity, nationalism, or xenophobia. Same word, different lexicons. When I hear patriot, I feel both resonance and unease. I sense the way it can unite and the way it can divide. I notice my body's ambivalence, an instinct to honor devotion, and a simultaneous recoil from the ways devotion has been weaponized. These examples show us why the somatic lexicon matters, because words are not neutral. They live in us. They breathe in us. They bind or free us. In this episode, we'll explore how our personal and collective lexicons are written, how trauma and culture inscribe them, how politics manipulates them, how we can heal them, and how mirror neurons shape them. But first, let's ground ourselves in the foundation, how words are written in flesh. Words written in flesh language is often described as symbolic, cerebral, and cognitive. But every speaker knows this is incomplete. Words are not just in the head, they are in the body. Think of the first time someone called you different. Did your shoulders slump, your stomach tighten, your face burn? Or did your chest expand, your eyes brighten, your breath deepen? The word was not only processed by your brain, it was registered somatically. This is what I mean when I say words are written in flesh. They live in muscle memory, posture, breath. Childhood imprints. Our somatic lexicon begins in childhood. The words spoken by caregivers, the tone of voice they used, and the silences they held all became part of our bodily dictionary. A child called clever repeatedly might grow up with a body that tenses every time they feel they have to perform. A child called lazy may carry slumped shoulders, an embodied shame. A child told you're safe now may soften, exhale, relax. Even the absence of words is inscribed. A parent who never says I love you leaves a gap in the lexicon. The silence itself becomes a word, charged with meaning. The weight of patriot. Consider again the word patriot. For someone raised in a culture where patriotism is celebrated, the word might feel like warmth in the chest, expansion in the breath. It is somatic pride. For someone from a marginalized community, the same word might feel like a knot in the stomach, a tightening of the jaw. It recalls exclusion, suspicion, surveillance. It is a somatic contraction. What fascinates me here is that the word itself has not changed. Only the body it lands in has. Each person's lexicon translates it differently, based on history, culture, and experience. Etymology as somatic history. This is why etymology matters. Words carry the sediment of centuries. To uncover their roots is to uncover how our bodies respond. Once more, take the corporation. Its root in the corpus body still echoes, even if faintly. When we say the word today, we may feel instinctive distrust, a sense of something cold, inhuman, bodiless. This is not accidental. It is the ghost of its etymology haunting our nervous system. Take patriot. From Latin patria, fatherland. Embedded in the root is paternal authority, belonging to the father's land. To invoke patriotism is to invoke family, home, and duty. No wonder the word stirs such a strong bodily response. It touches primal associations of protection and loyalty, but also of hierarchy and exclusion. Etymology is not just history, it is somatic archaeology. It reveals the layers of meaning that still vibrate in our bodies when words are spoken. Silence as lexicon. We also need to acknowledge silence. Silence is not nothing, it is charged. When a child grows up in a household where certain words are never spoken, such as love, grief, and apology, the silence itself becomes an entry in the lexicon. It lives as tightness in the throat, hesitation in the tongue, fear of speaking. Silence can wound, but silence can also heal. Ritual silence, contemplative silence, the pause between words. These too are lexicon entries carrying weight and meaning. Personal reflection. When I first realized how much language lives in the body, I began to notice my own reactions. Words like broken, failure, patriot, and even corporation triggered sensations before thoughts. I felt tightness, heat, and heaviness. It made me realize that I carry a lexicon not just in my mind, but in my flesh. Every insult, every praise, every silence is there, waiting to be read. This is what I want you to begin noticing too. Not just what words mean in the dictionary, but what they mean in your nervous system. Micro-reflection. Think of a word that has been with you for a long time. Speak it aloud. How does your body respond? Does it expand or contract? Does it feel warm, cold, heavy, light? This is an entry in your somatic lexicon. Microactivity. Choose one word that has always carried weight for you. Write it down. Then, if possible, look up its etymology. Does the root meaning shift how you feel about it? Does knowing its origin add depth, or change the spell it casts on you? Notice how your body responds to both the current and the original meaning. Words are written in flesh. They are not only tools of thought. They are inscriptions in our muscles, postures, breaths. Our somatic lexicon begins in childhood, expands through culture, and is haunted by etymology. Some words feel like home, some feel like exiles, some feel like ghosts. In the next part, we'll go deeper into how trauma and memory inscribe the lexicon, how words can act like scars in the nervous system, reactivating pain long after the event has passed. But for now, sit with this. Your body is a dictionary. Every word you know is written there, not only in meaning, but as sensation. Trauma, memory, and the lexicon one. Language as wound language does not only describe pain, it can cause it. When words are used as weapons, they become more than symbols. They become scars. A word spoken in anger is not simply sound, it is an act. The insult lands, the body contracts, and the silence afterwards lingers. Long after the word has faded from the air, its imprint remains in the listener's lexicon, etched in memory, reinforced by repetition, triggered by echoes in later life. We often think of trauma as an event, but in truth, it is also a vocabulary, a lexicon of phrases, tones, silences, and labels that live on in the nervous system. Some words expand us, but others diminish us. This is where linguistics and embodiment meet, in the recognition that words can wound, and those wounds are remembered. 2. The linguistics of labels. Linguists distinguish between semantics, what a word means, and pragmatics, what it does in context. Semantically, the word failure means lack of success. Pragmatically, when spoken to a child, you're a failure does not just describe. It condemns, fixes identity, and silences. This is the difference between definition and effect. Semantics is the dictionary. Pragmatics is lived reality. Labels operate almost entirely on the pragmatic level. They reduce the complexity of a person to a single term. They are not conversation. They are closure. To be labelled lazy, stupid, broken, crazy, or foreign is to be collapsed into a category. The label acts as a spell. It redefines the person in the eyes of others, and often in their own. And because the body responds to labels with contraction, shame, or silence, these labels embed themselves in the somatic lexicon. 3. The inversion of conspiracy theorist. Few labels illustrate this more clearly than conspiracy theorist. Semantically, it should mean little more than someone with a theory about conspiracy. A conspiracy is simply a coordinated plan carried out in secret. A theorist is someone who proposes an explanation. By definition, then, conspiracy theorist should be a neutral term. Yet pragmatically, in modern discourse, it is anything but. The phrase has been inverted. It no longer invites debate. It closes it. It does not mean someone with a theory worth examining. It means irrational, paranoid, untrustworthy. This inversion is strategic. By attaching stigma to the phrase, society has created a linguistic shortcut. Dismiss the speaker without engaging the content. It is a form of pragmatic silencing. To call someone a conspiracy theorist is to say, in effect, what you say is invalid before you even speak. The brilliance and danger of this inversion lies in its efficiency. It collapses complex discussions into a single dismissive label. It discourages dissent, not by countering arguments, but by discrediting the speaker. 4. Stigma as spell. This is how stigma functions in language. A stigmatic label is not simply descriptive, it is performative. It does something to the speaker and the listener. To the speaker, it induces shame, hesitation, or silence. To the listener, it induces dismissal, conformity, or relief. At least I am not that. The label thus operates as a kind of social spell. It shapes behaviour not by persuasion but by exclusion. This is why stigma is so powerful. It does not need evidence. It does not need logic. It only needs repetition. Every time the term conspiracy theorist is used dismissively, the spell is reinforced. The word becomes heavier, more charged, more inscribed in the somatic lexicon, not just for individuals, but for the culture as a whole. 5. Silence and withheld speech. One of the most damaging effects of such labels is not only what they say, but what they prevent. When someone has been called a conspiracy theorist often enough, they learn to withhold speech. They anticipate ridicule before words leave their tongue. This is not mere caution, it is linguistic trauma. The body contracts, the throat tightens, the voice falters. The silence itself becomes part of the lexicon. Withheld language is itself an inscription. A person may carry dozens of unsaid sentences in their body, each one charged with the fear of dismissal. Over time, the silence weighs as heavily as the words themselves. 6. Scenario walkthrough. The label lands. Let's take a moment to see how this works. You are sitting with friends. You raise a tentative question about a news story, noticing gaps in the official narrative. Before you finish your thought, someone chuckles and says, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist." The room shifts, laughter rises, the conversation moves on. Semantically, the phrase should mean little more than someone with a speculative theory. Pragmatically, it has done much more. It has shut you down, altered the group dynamic, and excluded your voice. Notice what happens in your body. Perhaps your stomach knots. Perhaps your throat tightens. Perhaps you laugh along to cover the sting. The point is, the label has worked. It has performed in silence. Now imagine you are not the one labeled, but the one hearing it applied to another. You feel a wave of relief, that's not me. You relax into conformity. You are safe because the label has marked someone else as unsafe. This is how stigma perpetuates itself, not only through those it silences, but through those it reassures. 7. Linguistic scar tissue. Once a word has been used enough times in this way, it develops what we might call linguistic scar tissue. The phrase conspiracy theorist now carries more cultural charge than semantic clarity. Its etymological root is forgotten. Its pragmatic power dominates. This scar tissue is thick, sticky, and difficult to peel away. Even those who recognize the manipulation may hesitate to speak, fearing association with the label. And so the lexicon grows distorted. Words no longer mean what they should. They mean what they have been made to mean. 8. Reflection. Your inherited labels take a moment to reflect. What labels have you carried that silenced you? Were you ever called lazy, stupid, crazy, dramatic, or extremist? Did those words stop you from speaking, not because they were true, but because they were heavy? These are your lexicon entries. They live in you still, shaping what feels safe to say, what feels dangerous, what remains unspoken. 9. Microactivity. Reframing a stigma word here is a small exercise. 1. Write down one label that has been used against you. 2. Look at it semantically. What does it actually mean in the dictionary? 3. Now look at it pragmatically. What does it do when spoken to you? 4. Finally ask, can this word be reframed? For example, conspiracy theorist semantically, someone who theorizes about conspiracies. Pragmatically, irrational paranoid. But reframed, critical thinker who asks difficult questions. Crazy semantically, deviating from norm. Pragmatically, unreliable. Reframed, creative, willing to think differently. By separating semantics from pragmatics, you weaken the stigma's spell. You begin to reclaim agency over your lexicon. Trauma lives in language, not only in the words spoken, but in the silences enforced. Labels like conspiracy theorist show us how words can be inverted into stigma. Semantically neutral, pragmatically silencing. They do not invite dialogue, they end it. They do not expand lexicons, they constrict them. When we recognize this, we begin to see the somatic lexicon more clearly. It is not just a record of meaning. It is a record of wounds, closures, and exclusions. The next step is to move from the personal to the collective. Because lexicons are not only individual, they are cultural. Whole communities live inside shared vocabularies of pride and shame. And words like patriot, alien, migrant, hero remind us that language does not just inscribe individuals, but entire nations. Culture, identity, and the collective lexicon 1. The collective lexicon, every society speaks its own body of words. Some are obvious, national anthems, pledges, slogans. Others are subtler, the unspoken assumptions of who we are and who they are. This is what I mean by the collective lexicon. The shared vocabulary that binds groups together, defines insiders and outsiders, signals belonging and exclusion. A collective lexicon is not just a list of terms. It is a living code of emotion. To call someone a patriot, hero, martyr, or terrorist is not simply to describe them. It is to place them inside or outside the symbolic body of the group. And this is where words become dangerous, because the collective lexicon is rarely neutral. It is loaded, charged, tilted toward the interests of those with power. 2. Terrorist as cultural anchor. Few words reveal this better than terrorist. Semantically, the definition seems straightforward. Someone who uses violence or intimidation to instill terror, often for political aims. But pragmatically, a terrorist is never neutral. It is always used from one perspective against another. It is always a label of delegitimization. The proverb captures this perfectly. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. To one group, an act of violence against a state is terrorism, criminal, illegitimate, and evil. To another, the same act is resistance, courageous, necessary, heroic. The semantic core is overshadowed by the pragmatic use. To call someone a terrorist is to strip them of legitimacy, to cast them outside the moral community. To call the same person a freedom fighter is to cloak them in dignity and purpose. This is why terrorist is one of the most contested entries in the global lexicon. Its power lies not in what it means, but in who controls its use. 3. The politics of naming is never innocent. To name is to claim power. When a government calls a group terrorists, it is not simply describing tactics. It is shaping public perception, securing political legitimacy, and mobilizing fear. When a resistance group calls itself freedom fighters, they are not simply describing motivation. They are shaping solidarity, legitimizing sacrifice, and mobilizing courage. The politics of naming is about framing the lexicon. Whoever controls the label controls the emotional resonance of the event. Consider how inconsistently the term is applied. One group's violent act is terrorism, another's is war, defense, or intervention. A bombing carried out by a state military may be called a strike or operation. The same act by a non-state actor is called terrorism. The semantics are blurred. The pragmatics are everything. 4. Collective emotion and identity words like terrorist and freedom fighter are not just political. They are somatic. When a population hears terrorist attack, the body responds. Adrenaline surges, breath quickens, fear spreads. The word does not only describe, it induces vigilance, even if the information is false, fake, or invalid. When the same act is called a freedom action, the body responds differently. Pride swells, grief is reframed as sacrifice, fear becomes courage. The difference is not in the event, it is in the lexicon. The body reads the word, and the nervous system follows. This is why collective labels are so powerful. They bind groups not only intellectually, but emotionally. They entrain hearts, synchronize breath, align postures. They turn scattered individuals into unified collectives. The somatic lexicon is thus not only personal but cultural. Whole communities carry embodied reactions to words like terrorist, migrant, refugee, and patriot. 5. Scenario walkthrough. A bombing. 2 frames A. Bombing occurs in a city. Civilians are killed. Frame 1. Government statement. The state leader appears on television. We have suffered a terrorist attack. Innocent lives have been lost at the hands of extremists who despise our freedoms. The population contracts in fear. The word terrorist signals danger, evil, and illegitimacy. The body tenses, rallies behind authority, and accepts restrictions in the name of safety. Frame 2. Resistance statement. The same act is described by the group who carried it out. This was not terrorism. This was a freedom operation against an occupying force. Our martyrs have struck a blow for liberation. Here the word freedom reframes the act. The body of the supporters expands. Pride and sorrow mingle. Fear is present, but it is channeled into defiance. Frame 3. International media. Different outlets frame it differently. Some echo the terrorist attack language. Others use neutral terms like militant or fighter. Each choice changes the lexicon of their audience. The event is the same. The bodies that respond to it are different. What changes is the word. 6. The elasticity of the lexicon. This is the elasticity of the collective lexicon. Words are stretched, twisted, and repurposed. Their semantic roots remain, but their pragmatic use shifts with context and power. Terrorists can mean enemy or neighbor, depending on who speaks. Refugee can mean victim or burden. Patriot can mean hero or zealot. The lexicon is not fixed, it is contested, and the contest is not only intellectual but somatic. It is fought in the bodies of populations, whose nervous systems are tuned by the words they hear. 7. The collective lexicon and belonging is always mediated by language. To be called a citizen, an ally, or a comrade is to be inside. To be called an enemy, a foreigner, or a terrorist is to be outside. This is why identity movements fight over labels. To reclaim queer as pride. To reject illegal as dehumanizing. To insist on refugee rather than migrant. These are not academic quibbles. There are battles over the collective lexicon. And because the lexicon lives in bodies, the stakes are visceral. When a label shifts, whole populations breathe differently. A slur reclaimed becomes solidarity. A label rejected becomes resistance. 8. Reflection prompt. Take a moment to reflect. What collective labels have shaped your identity? Have you ever felt pride in being called a patriot, ally, or citizen? Have you ever felt pain at being called a foreigner, a migrant, or an outsider? These are not just words. They are lexicon entries shared across your community, written into your body as belonging or exclusion. 9. Microactivity, double labeling. Here is a small practice. 1. Write down 3 collective labels, for example, terrorist, migrant, and patriot. 2. Now for each one, write down the alternative term another group might use. A terrorist can become a freedom fighter. A migrant can become an expatriate. Patriot can become a nationalist. 3. Speak each pair aloud. Notice how your body responds to each. You will likely feel the difference. One may constrict, the other may expand. This is the somatic lexicon at work, not just in you, but in your culture. The somatic lexicon is not only personal, it is collective. It lives in the words that societies repeat, the labels that governments enforce, the slogans that movements chant. Terrorist reveals this vividly. It is a word that splits the world. One side hears terror, the other hears freedom. One side contracts in fear, the other expands in defiance. The proverb captures the paradox. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. To understand this is to see that language is never neutral. The collective lexicon is contested ground. Every label is a battle over belonging, legitimacy, and identity. And this is where we now turn to the politics of the lexicon. How power manipulates language, not just to name the world, but to control it. The politics of the somatic lexicon. 1. Language as governance. When we think of political control, we often think of laws, policies, and surveillance. But power is exercised not only through force or regulation, it is exercised through language. The state does not need to coerce every citizen directly. It only needs to shape the lexicon through which citizens perceive the world. Because once the lexicon is shaped, behaviour follows. This is the politics of the somatic lexicon. Not just what governments say, but how the words they repeat settle into the bodies of populations. How slogans, labels, and reframed phrases bypass debate and move directly into nervous systems. To rule the lexicon is to rule perception, and to rule perception is to rule conduct. 2. Case study, stay home to save lives. During the global pandemic, one of the most repeated phrases was stay home to save lives. Semantically, the phrase is simple. It combines instructions stay home with moral appeal, save lives. Pragmatically, it does much more. It reframes compliance as virtue and dissent as harm. To stay home is not only to follow guidelines, it is to be a good person. To question the instruction is not only to disagree, it is to endanger others. This is why the slogan was so effective. It bypassed complex debate about risk, policy, or proportionality. Instead, it framed the choice in stark moral terms, life or death, good or bad, compliance or harm. The somatic effect was immediate. For many, hearing the phrase triggered contraction, fear of killing loved ones, and guilt at the thought of non-compliance. For others, it triggered duty, a sense of moral obligation, and pride in sacrifice. The anchoring is brilliant. Home evokes safety, warmth, and belonging. Lives evoke ultimate moral weight. To link the two is to make obedience not just rational but sacred. This is how political slogans work on the somatic lexicon. They inscribe themselves into the nervous system, making disobedience feel not only risky but shameful. 3. Case study, safe and effective. Another pandemic-era mantra was safe and effective. Semantically, it is reassurance. The product in question is both safe to use and effective at its purpose. Pragmatically, it became a spell. Repeated endlessly, the phrase reduced complexity, silenced dissent, and redefined legitimacy. To question safety was to be reckless. To question effectiveness was to be irresponsible. The genius of the phrase is its brevity. 2 simple words, paired, endlessly repeated. The body relaxes at safe. The mind accepts it effectively. The nervous system is reassured before the intellect can ask for evidence. The result was not merely communication, but entrainment. A population repeating the phrase together begins to embody it. Breath slows, dissent hesitates, conformity strengthens. This is how mantras work, whether in religion or politics. They bypass argument and inscribe themselves directly into the somatic lexicon. 4. Case study. War on terror. After 9/11, the dominant political slogan was war on terror. Semantically, the phrase is absurd. One cannot declare war on an emotion. Yet pragmatically, it was devastatingly effective. By declaring a war on terror, the state secured decades of military action without a clear endpoint. The war became endless because the target was abstract. The phrase reframed global politics. To be against the war was to be soft on terror. To be for it was to be strong, patriotic, safe. Somatically, the phrase induced vigilance. War activated fight-or-flight responses. Terror magnified fear. Together they locked populations into a state of heightened anxiety, making extraordinary measures acceptable. The somatic lexicon absorbed the phrase, and with it, an entire geopolitical shift. 5. Case study. Patriot Act. When surveillance laws were introduced in the United States and other countries across the world, which adopted globalist policies, only named differently, they were not called the Surveillance Expansion Act or the Civil Liberty Restriction Act. They were called the Patriot Act. Semantically, the phrase linked law with love of country. Pragmatically, it silenced opposition. To oppose the act was to risk being labelled unpatriotic. To support it was to align with loyalty and safety. The emotional charge of the word patriot did the work. It reframed compliance as devotion, dissent as betrayal. This is the power of emotional anchors in political language. Words like patriot, freedom, safety, and lives are not just descriptive. They are effective. They carry somatic weight. 6. How political slogans shape the somatic lexicon across these examples. The pattern is clear. Political slogans are not designed to inform. They are designed to inscribe. They work through repetition, the mantra effect, simplicity, short phrases, easy to remember, anchoring, linking instruction with moral weight, stay home leads to saved lives, stigma, making dissent equivalent to harm or betrayal. The result is somatic entrainment. Populations do not just think differently, they feel differently. Hearts race, stomachs knot, throats tighten, and shoulders align with the dominant narrative. This is governance through the lexicon. It is not just about the law, it is about nervous system regulation at scale. 7. Scenario walkthrough. Hearing the spell, imagine yourself in March 2020. You turn on the television. Every channel, every headline carries the same phrase: stay home to save lives. The repetition settles in. Your chest tightens. You imagine your elderly neighbor, your parents, your children. To step outside now feels not only risky, but lethal. You comply, not only because of the law, but because of lexicon. The phrase has inscribed itself in your body. Now imagine a different message: protect freedom. The same act, staying home or not, would be reframed. The body might respond with pride in resisting control, rather than guilt in resisting safety. This is the power of the political lexicon. The same body, the same choice, a different word, radically different outcome. 8. Reflection prompt. Think about the political phrases you have heard in your lifetime. Which ones stuck with you? Which ones reassured you? Which ones unsettled you? How did they land in your body? Did they tighten your chest, calm your breath, fill you with pride, or leave you with shame? These are entries in your somatic lexicon, inscribed not by personal experience alone, but by collective repetition. 9. Microactivity, semantic pragmatic analysis. Here is a small exercise. 1. Choose one political slogan you remember. It might be stay home to save lives, safe and effective, support the troops, or build back better. 2. Write down the semantic meaning, what the words literally say. 3. Write down the pragmatic meaning, what the words do socially. 4. Now speak both aloud. Notice how your body responds to each. You may find that the semantic meaning feels light, but the pragmatic meaning feels heavy, charged, somatic. This is the politics of the lexicon, the gap between what words mean and what they make us feel. Language is not only communication, it is governance. Through slogans like stay home to save lives, safe and effective, war on terror, and Patriot Act, we see how power inscribes itself into the somatic lexicon. Not through detailed argument, but through repetition, simplicity, and emotional anchors. These words do not only inform, they entrain. They bypass debate and move straight into the body. They shape nervous systems, align postures, and synchronize populations. To recognize this is to reclaim agency. To see slogans as spells is to break their automatic hold. To separate semantics from pragmatics is to weaken their force. And this is where we now turn to healing. Because if the lexicon can be manipulated, it can also be reclaimed. The next step is to ask, how do we rewrite our somatic lexicons so that words liberate rather than control? Healing the lexicon. 1. Why healing matters. Up to now, we've explored how words wound, how insults become scars, how labels silence, how political slogans manipulate. The somatic lexicon can feel heavy, a dictionary of trauma, stigma, and control. But here is the crucial truth. The lexicon is not fixed. It is not immutable. It can be rewritten. Healing the somatic lexicon is about reclaiming agency over words. It is about taking back the power to define, to frame, to choose. If words can wound, they can also heal. If they can silence, they can also liberate. Language is plastic, it's malleable, living, and dynamic. We forget this sometimes, because the words handed down to us feel absolute. But every dictionary entry is provisional. Every meaning can be reauthored. To heal the lexicon is to shift from passive inheritance to active authorship. It is to stop carrying words as burdens and start wielding them as tools. 2. Practices of rewriting. There are many ways to begin this work. Some are personal, others communal. Some are therapeutic, others creative. Therapy. In therapeutic settings, naming is often the first step. A person carries the word worthless unconsciously until it is spoken aloud in session. Once named, it can be examined. Is it true? Where did it come from? Whose voice is it? Therapy helps loosen the word's grip, turning it from identity into story. Poetry and artists and poets rewrite the lexicon aesthetically. They take slurs and turn them into songs. They take silence and fill it with rhythm. The body responds differently to a word set in verse, painted on a wall, shouted in performance. The word is recoded. Ritual and affirmation. Repetition can harm, but it can also heal. Affirmations are a way of inscribing new meanings into the lexicon. A phrase repeated daily, I'm enough, I belong, I create, gradually rewires somatic response. Rituals amplify this effect, turning repetition into embodied practice. Community reclamation. Some of the most powerful examples come from collective work. Communities have reclaimed words like queer and cripple, transforming stigma into solidarity. These acts show that healing the lexicon is not only individual but cultural. A word once used to wound becomes a badge of pride. Each of these practices reflects the same principle. Language is not fixed. It is alive, and we can reshape it. 3. Etymology as medicine. One of the simplest and most profound tools for healing is etymology. To trace a word back to its root is often to discover a meaning forgotten, and with it, a new way of relating. Take the word respect. Today, respect often means deference, obedience, and compliance. When told respect your elders, the connotation is often, do not question them. Respect authority, do not resist. But etymologically, respect comes from the Latin respectus, to look back at, regard, and consider. Respect is not about blind obedience. It is about seeing again, looking twice, holding another in attention. It is not submission, it is recognition. When I first learned this, the word shifted for me. It softened. Respect no longer felt like suppression. It felt like a presence. To respect someone is not to diminish myself, but to truly see them and in turn to be seen. This is etymology as medicine. To rediscover roots is to reframe experience. The Somatic Lexicon responds. Shoulders that once tightened at the word respect may now soften, because the word no longer demands silence. It invites attention. This practice can be applied widely. To trace words is to loosen their grip. To uncover forgotten meanings is to re-enchant language, turning wounds into insights. 4. Personal practice. The word diverse. Let's consider another word, one especially charged in our current cultural moment, diverse. In contemporary discourse, diverse is a buzzword. It appears in mission statements, corporate brochures, and political speeches. It is often used to signal inclusivity, but equally often it feels tokenistic, hollow, performative. For many, the word carries mixed resonance. It can inspire hope for genuine inclusion, but it can also trigger cynicism, suspicion, or fatigue. The Somatic Lexicon holds both, expansion at the ideal, contraction at the hypocrisy. To heal this word, we need to return to its deeper meaning. Diverse comes from the Latin diversis, turned in different directions. At root, it means multiplicity, variety, richness of form. Diversity, then, is not just about demographic quotas. It is about life itself. Forests are diverse. Languages are diverse. Cultures, ideas, and perspectives are all diverse. Diversity is abundance, a refusal of uniformity. When I hold the word this way, it lands differently in my body. Instead of corporate jargon, I feel vitality. Instead of tokenism, I feel complexity. To be diverse is to be alive, unpredictable, flourishing. This is how personal practice heals the lexicon. By refusing to accept surface-level buzz, by digging deeper, by reauthoring resonance. 5. Reflection prompt. Take a moment to reflect. What word in your life has most shaped you? Was it a word of wound or a word of pride? How would it feel to rewrite that word, to discover a new root, to give it a new definition in your somatic lexicon? 6. Microactivity. Rewriting one word. Here is a simple but powerful exercise. 1. Choose one word that feels heavy for you. 2. Speak it aloud 3 times. Notice how your body responds. Do you tense? Do you slump? Do you feel heat, shame, or contraction? 3. Now trace the word back. Look up its etymology. Or if you cannot find one, invent a root meaning that liberates you. 4. Rewrite the word on paper. Give it a new definition. 5. Speak the new word or meaning 3 times. Notice the shift in your body. For example, respect from obedience to recognition, diverse from tokenism to abundance, crazy from stigma to creativity. The shift may be small at first, but with repetition, the somatic lexicon begins to heal. The word no longer carries the same weight. It begins to open, to breathe. Healing the lexicon is not about forgetting. It is not about erasing wounds or pretending words never harmed us. It is about transforming. The somatic lexicon is alive. It can be scarred, but it can also be rewritten. Through therapy, poetry, ritual, community, etymology, and personal practice, we can reclaim words. We can soften their grip, shift their resonance, invent new possibilities. The words we carry need not remain burdens. They can become tools. They can become doorways. They can become medicine. And this brings us to the next stage of our exploration, the mirror-linguistic hypothesis. Because if words live in the body, and if they are shaped by the emotional tone of those around us, then our lexicons are not just personal or political, they are intersubjective. They are mirrored, transmitted, reflected neuron to neuron, voice to voice. Before we get there, pause with this. Which words in your somatic lexicon are ready to be healed? Which ones are you ready to rewrite? The mirror-linguistic hypothesis 1. Setting the stage throughout this episode, we've seen how words live in the body, as wounds, as politics, as inherited meanings. But a question lingers underneath all of this. How do words take root in us so deeply? Why does a single label, patriot, terrorist, bully, land not just in the mind, but in the gut, in the chest, in the nervous system? This is where I want to propose something new, something that draws together linguistics, psychology, and embodiment. The mirror-linguistic hypothesis. The hypothesis suggests that we do not only learn words by their dictionary definitions. We learn them through the mirrored states of those around us. When a caregiver speaks a word, it is not only the sound that the child takes in, it is the tone, the face, the posture, the nervous system behind it. Through mirror neurons, The child's body echoes the state of the speaker, and that state becomes inscribed in the somatic lexicon alongside the semantic meaning of the word. In other words, words carry not just concepts but mirrored emotions, not just definitions but nervous system imprints. 2. Mirror neurons. A quick primer neuroscience gives us a starting point. In the early 1990s, researchers discovered mirror neurons in macaque monkeys. These cells fired not only when the monkey grasped a peanut, but also when the monkey watched someone else grasp it. In humans, similar systems have been observed. We flinch when someone stubs their toe. We yawn when others yawn. We feel tension when we hear someone's voice tighten in anger. Mirror neurons provide a neurobiological basis for empathy, imitation, and resonance. But their role in language has not been fully explored. This is where the mirror-linguistic hypothesis extends the picture, suggesting that the words we learn are anchored not only by symbols, but by mirrored states. 3. The hypothesis mirror-linguistic hypothesis, as I propose it here, can be summarized in 4 claims. 1. Words are learned somatically first, semantically second. The body mirrors the caregiver's emotional state before the mind understands the meaning. 2. Mirror neurons mediate this process. They inscribe tone, posture, and effect into the somatic lexicon. 3. These imprints persist. Later in life, hearing the word reactivates not just the meaning, but the original bodily state. 4. Cultural transmission builds on this. Entire communities share lexicons not only of meaning, but of mirrored nervous system states. This shifts how we think about language. Words are not only cognitive codes, they are embodied inheritances. 4. Example, the word bully. Consider the word bully. For a young child, the semantics are vague. They may not yet grasp that it means someone who intimidates or coerces. What they grasp is the tone with which the word is spoken. A teacher says, "That child is a bully," with a stern face. The child mirrors the tension. A parent says, "Tell me if anyone bullies you," with protective concern. The child mirrors the anxiety. A peer accuses, "You're a bully," in front of others. The child mirrors the shame. In each case, the nervous system encodes the state. The word is not just a label, it is a trigger. Chest tightening, stomach churning, throat constricting. These responses become part of the word's meaning. Later, the child learns the dictionary definition, but the somatic charge remains. To hear a bully is to re-experience the mirrored state. This shows the mirror-linguistic hypothesis at work. Words carry mirrored nervous system imprints, not just abstract meanings. 5. Pragmatics of embodied labels. This helps explain why the same word can mean such different things in different environments. In one household, bully is used with outrage, a signal of danger, injustice. In another, it may be used dismissively, kids will be kids. In yet another, it is hurled as an insult with little concern for accuracy. The semantics stay roughly constant. The pragmatics and the embodied resonance shift dramatically. This is why one child may grow up deeply sensitive to bullying, flinching at the word, while another shrugs it off. Their somatic lexicons are different because the mirrored states were different. 6. Cultural transmission. The hypothesis also applies at the cultural level. Take the word terrorist. A child watching the news sees not just the footage, but the fearful eyes of adults, the tense tone of broadcasters, the hush in the room. The body mirrors fear long before the mind grasps geopolitics. Or take patriot. A child hears the word spoken with swelling pride, sees hands on hearts, hears an anthem rise. The body mirrors expansion, belonging, and dignity. In both cases, the lexicon is not only semantic, it is somatic. And because whole communities mirror the same states, cultural lexicons are formed. This is why slogans, chants, and political labels are so effective. They entrain nervous systems collectively, embedding mirrored states as much as meanings. 7. Scenario walkthrough. The bully in the room. Imagine a classroom. A teacher announces, "We need to talk about bullying." Immediately, bodies shift. Some children straighten with pride, remembering times they stood up to bullies. Others shrink, remembering shame. Some glance nervously, worried the label may be applied to them. The word itself is a catalyst. It summons mirrored states from past encounters. Now imagine a child directly labeled. "You're the bully here." The word lands like a stone. Even if the child's behaviour was complex, the label simplifies it, reducing identity to a single frame. The child's body contracts, heat, shame, and defensiveness. The word becomes part of the somatic lexicon, carried for years to come. This is not abstract. This is pragmatic, embodied linguistics. 8. Nervous system language, NSL. Here is where the mirror-linguistic hypothesis opens a new door. If words are inscribed with mirrored states, then deliberate use of language can shift those states. This is the basis for what I call nervous system language, NSL, a framework for using words consciously to regulate, expand, and repattern the body's responses. Where hostile language contracts, NSL can expand. Where bullying labels wound, NSL can soothe. Where political slogans hijack, NSL can liberate. For example, instead of telling a child, "Don't be a bully," which contracts, we can say, "I see you want to be strong. How can you use that strength kindly?" This reframes the state while validating the need beneath it. Instead of telling ourselves, I'm broken, we can reframe it as, I'm adapting, I'm learning, I'm becoming. The nervous system shifts with the words. NSL is about designing a lexicon of regulation, words and phrases that cue safety, expansion, curiosity, rather than collapse. 9. Implications for healing and culture. The mirror-linguistic hypothesis has profound implications. For individuals, it suggests healing requires not only cognitive reframing, but somatic reauthoring of words. Therapy, journaling, and poetry are tools of nervous system lexicon repair. For families, it shows that tone matters as much as content. The words we use with children are not just about meaning, but the mirrored states they will carry for life. For culture, it reveals why slogans and labels are so powerful. They are not simply rhetoric, they are mass entertainment devices. For the future, it points toward a conscious linguistic practice, nervous system language NSL, where we design words to cue safety, dignity, and curiosity instead of fear and control. 10. Reflection prompt. Take a moment. What is one word from your childhood that carried more tone than meaning? Was it a bully, lazy, polite, normal, or crazy? How did you mirror the emotional state behind it? And how do you feel that word in your body today? 11. Microactivity. Remirroring. Try this simple exercise. 1. Choose a word that carries a charge for you, e.g. bully. 2. Recall how it was spoken to you. What tone, what posture, what emotion? 3. Speak the word aloud now, but change the tone. Smile as you say it. Whisper it gently. Shout it playfully. 4. Notice how your body responds differently. This demonstrates that mirrored states can be shifted. The lexicon is plastic. Words can be recoded. The mirror-linguistic hypothesis reframes language as more than code. It is a mirror system. Words are imprinted in us not only by their meanings, but by the emotional states we mirrored when we first heard them. This explains why some words feel like wounds, others like spells, others like home. It is not only semantics, it is somatics, it is mirroring, and it opens the path toward a new practice, nervous system language, a way of using words consciously, ethically, creatively, not to contract and control, but to expand and regulate. The somatic lexicon can be scarred, but it can also be healed. The words we inherit can be rewritten. The words we speak can become anchors of safety and freedom. And so we arrive at the heart of this episode. Language is embodied inheritance. It is mirrored, transmitted, and inscribed. To reclaim it is to reclaim ourselves. Gathering the threads, we've travelled far in this episode. From definitions to trauma, from stigma to politics, from etymology to mirror neurons, all circling one truth: words live in the body. We began by defining language itself, not just as grammar or dictionary, but as tone, pause, silence, and gesture. We saw how trauma and stigma create scars in the lexicon, how labels like conspiracy theorists silence before they even define. We explored collective identity, how words like terrorist and patriot divide the world into us and them. We examined politics, where slogans like stay home to save lives or safe and effective bypass debate and inscribe obedience. We shifted to healing, tracing roots like respect and reframing buzzwords like diverse as living invitations rather than hollow jargon. And finally, I proposed the mirror-linguistic hypothesis, that words imprint not only meanings, but mirrored states, carried from caregiver to child, culture to individual, nervous system to nervous system. The somatic lexicon is both wound and medicine, burden and liberation. It is the map we inherit, but also the map we can redraw, the living mirror. What does this mean for you, listening right now? It means that every word you speak, and every word spoken to you, is more than sound. It is a mirror. It is shaping nervous systems. Think of the word bully. Think of how quickly your body reacts to it, long before you unpack meaning. That is the mirror in action. Think of the word respect. Does it contract you as obedience, or expand you as recognition? That is etymology as medicine. Think of the word diverse. Does it feel hollow, corporate, or tokenistic? Or alive, flourishing, abundant? That is personal reframing. This is the task, to become conscious of our somatic lexicons, to ask not only what words mean, but how they feel. Not only what they say, but what they do to our bodies. Healing as rewriting healing, then, is not erasure, it is rewriting. To take a word that once silenced us, lazy, crazy, and outsider, and to reframe it, to dig into its roots, to see it again, to inscribe it differently, to realize that our lexicons are not prisons but possibilities. They are not fixed dictionaries, but living mirrors. And in rewriting, we change not only the word, but the body that holds it. Breath softens, shoulders ease, voice strengthens, a collective responsibility. This is not only individual work, it is collective. The words we repeat in public, in the media, politics, classrooms, and pulpits shape the nervous systems of entire populations. To call someone a terrorist is to contract. To call them freedom fighters is to expand. To call a law the Patriot Act is to silence dissent. To call it surveillance would invite debate. We must therefore ask, what lexicons are we building together? Are we instilling fear, shame, and obedience, or dignity, curiosity, and freedom? Every slogan, every label is an ethical act. It inscribes bodies, not just minds. What is one word that has lived in your body for too long, heavy and unexamined? What might it mean to trace its roots, to see it again, to reframe it? How would your body feel if that word no longer carried shame, but possibility? This is the invitation of the Somatic Lexicon, to rewrite ourselves through language. Closing activity, lexicon reclamation. Here's a final activity for you. 1. Choose 3 words that feel heavy in your body. 2. For each, write down the semantic definition, dictionary, the pragmatic effect, what it does when spoken, the mirrored state, how it feels in your body. Now, reframe each word, trace etymology, or invent a new meaning. Write a sentence using it in this new way. 4. Speak each reframed word aloud slowly. Notice how your breath, posture, and tone shift. This is how healing begins, word by word, body by body, lexicon by lexicon. If you've listened to me before, you'll know my work branches out in many directions. In the Inversiverse, I explored how perception and control shape the worlds we live in. In the Unfiltered Human on the Fringe, I gave language to emotions often silenced. In The Body Knows, I traced how memory and meaning are etched into flesh. The Linguaverse is another doorway into new terrain, a way of seeing how words themselves carry those patterns, how they bind identity, shape thought, and cast nervous system spells. Each project is a different angle on the same question. What does it mean to be human in a world built of words, wounds, and wonders? So here we close episode 4, the Somatic Lexicon. From stigma to slogans, from respect to diversity, from bullying to mirroring, we've seen how language lives in us. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake to your own language, and remember, every word you speak can move the body from fear into peace. You've been listening to the Linguaverse, James Miller.